purpose and objective of this presentation is to learn about the 3 Mile Island nuclear disaster, to discuss the post-accident cleanup process, and look at the post-accident exposure and radiation health effects. This is my table of contents. We're going to look at the TMI power station, post-exposure area map, the cleanup timeline, the sources of radiation and possible health effects of radiation exposure. Then we're going to specifically look at some studies that were conducted after the accident and discuss their results. All the references for the data shown in this presentation will be presented on the last slide. 3 Mile Island Power Station is located in Londonderry Township, Pennsylvania, on the Susquehanna River, just south of Harrisburg, USA. It had two pressurized water units or reactors, namely TMI-1 and TMI-2. On March 28, 1979, one of the most significant accidents in the United States commercial nuclear energy happened. Reactor 2 suffered a partial meltdown due to a cooling malfunction, which led to its complete destruction. TMI-1 came in service in 1974, and it remained the best performing unit in the United States until it was completely shut down in 2019. Looking at post-accident exposure, some radioactive gases were released, but this release was very minimal. It was well below any level that could have been associated with health effects from radiation exposure. The average radiation dose to people living within 10 miles of the plant was 0.8 millisieverts, with no more than 1 millisievert to any single resident. The level of 0.08 is about equal to a chest X-ray exposure. There were no reported major health effects or deaths after the accident. This accident, the main cause of concern was the possibility of radiation-induced health effects, mainly cancer, surrounding the plant area, specifically among people who were within a certain mile radius. Because of this concern, studies were conducted to learn more about increased cancer risk in patients within a 10-mile radius. In this figure, we can see that right after the accident, decisions were made that within 5-mile radius, people were informed that if they want to evacuate, they were voluntarily allowed to do so. And within the 10-mile radius, residents were advised to stay indoors as the radiation dosage wasn't of a higher level. This table here shows us a little overview about the cleanup timeline after the accident, which started in July 1980 and was finished in September 1993, and we can see it almost took about 14 years to be completed. And it costed approximately $973 million. The cleanup process was very uniquely challenging, both technically and radiologically. The surfaces had to be decontaminated. The water used and stored during the cleanup process had to be processed, and about 100 tons of damaged uranium fuel had to be removed from the reactor vessel, without any hazard to cleanup workers or the public. An interesting fact here that my father-in-law was actually working at the TMI site after that, 3 or 4 months after the accident. So it was nice to get his insight on the whole process as well. Taking a look at this pie chart, we can get an idea about the various sources of radiation. The nuclear industry contributes the least, which is 1% as a source of radiation, while radon being the most at 51%. Medicine, which involves X-rays, etc., is about 17%, and cosmic rays, which are alpha, beta, gamma rays, etc., contribute about 17% as well. Now, in order for the lifetime risk of developing cancer to even increase slightly, require doses above 100 millisieverts during a very short frame would be required. And a dose of 100 millisievert would increase the lifetime of risk of cancer by 0.4%. to be compared with all the 40% of citizens who would develop cancer at some point in their life. So we can see that a significantly higher dose would be required than what was the exposure dose in this accident. We've often heard how we say that nuclear exposure is so harmful, radiation exposure is so harmful. I wanted to touch a little bit on the basics of what actually happened. So nuclear-related radiation exposure, a very low dose or low dose rate ionizing radiation causes lipid damage, DNA damage, and protein oxidation, which can cause cataracts, Alzheimer's disease, leukemia, and cancer. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the studies that were conducted after the accident. In 1990, the first epidemiological study was conducted by a team from Columbia University, which focused on local death rates before and after the accident for a 10-mile area around 3 Mile Island. 64% increase was reported in cancer cases, which increased from 1,722 to 2,831 from the time frame of 1975 to 1979 and 1981 to 1985, respectively. However, this study was demanded to be re-examined, which was done so by Stephen Wing, a nuclear radiation exposure epidemiologist. He found that the cancer rates were raised within a 10-mile radius after 2 years of the accident, specifically for leukemia being number 1, lung cancer, followed by all other types of cancers. Summarizing this presentation, 3 Mile Island accident happened on March 28, 1979, and is the most significant accident in the United States commercial nuclear energy. According to the NRC reports, there were no injuries or deaths to plant workers or nearby community residents. Epidemiological studies were conducted to study the incidence of cancer after the accident, but the results were possibly believed to be related to other contributing factors. Now, applying this accident's lessons produced very important results and resulted in continuous improvement in the performance of all nuclear power plants in the United States and worldwide. The references for this presentation will be listed on the next slide. Thank you very much.